All right, let's call this to order, our county board meeting, Thursday, February 21st at 7 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Hartke.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler.
Here.
Langenheim.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Michaels.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Petrie.
Here.
Quisenberry.
Here.
Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Carter. Kurtz.
Okay. We meet to serve. We meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and to the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Notice of the meeting, please.
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on February 21st, 2013, 7 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to approve of the agenda and the addendum, please.
Second.
I'm sorry. No, notice to motion to notice the meeting. Notice of the meeting. You have a motion for that to accept. First, Esri. Second, Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda and addendum. So move, Mr. James. Second, Miss Bergson. Didn't see that. I have one change before we move on. Number 11, Nursing Home Quarterly Report, is canceled for tonight due to inclement weather. Mr. Yema could not make it in from St. Louis. So since we had a study session just recently on the nursing home, we felt it would be appropriate to cancel that for this evening. Are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. These are the dates and times of the next regular meetings. Therefore, your information only. Standing committees, Committee of the Whole, and County Board are there for you. Yes, Ms. Petrie.
Information question. Could you tell us what is the trigger mechanism for the February study session?
Yeah, go ahead.
That is for the board to have a study session on the issue of restaurant inspections, which is coming from Public Health. And the presentation is rather lengthy, and it was determined it was too long to deal with in a COW meeting, so it was moved to the February study session.
Thank you very much.
And you should have a packet of that County Board agenda study session in front of you. It's an orange cover. You got that one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. You're welcome. All right, let's move on. For the consent agenda, I'd like the motion to accept the consent agenda. Any changes? Any Mr. Jay? Oh, you move to, okay. Mr. Jay moves, second. Second. Mr. Kibler. Are there any? No? Okay. All in favor?
No.
Oh, roll call. I'm sorry. Is a roll call vote on this?
Cowart. Esri.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Langenheim. Maxwell. McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader. Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Carter. Kurtz.
Yes. Thank you. Public participation. Before we get started, I just want to lay the ground rules. Each participant has 5 minutes to make their statement, and we have a 1-hour time limit on public participation. First, I'd like to call to the table Carol Ammons, please.
Good evening. This is awesome. I like it. First and foremost, I want to absolutely thank all of you for being here tonight in such a terrible weather storm, and all of those public who've been able to make it out too to share tonight. I know it's quite difficult for those especially living outside of the city. This could be quite hard. I'm here tonight to read a statement on behalf of CU Citizens for Peace and Justice and a number of other organizations, of which I'll name them as I conclude the statement. The Champaign County Board is considering a proposal to spend up to possibly $20 million on a new jail in Champaign County. Under this proposal, the board would pay for this jail construction from our public safety sales tax, which is currently bringing in about $4 million per year. We, the undersigned organizations, believe the county must change its priorities in terms of public safety. Instead of building new jail cells, public safety tax revenues should go to fund preventive services and programs that will keep people out of jail. These include youth job training, mental health services, substance abuse treatment, reentry programs for people returning home from prison, and measures to address the racial discrepancies in the jail population. We urge the board to work with the community to make these alternatives to incarceration a reality. The undersigned support this statement: Champaign-Urbana Citizens for Peace and Justice, the North End Breakfast Club, Champaign-Urbana Friends Meeting, Citizens with Conviction, the Graduate Employees Organization Solidarity Committee of the University of Illinois, the Immigration Forum, the Muslim American Society, the Planners Network of the University of Illinois. We are also waiting response from other organizations. Of course, we've gotten support from NAMI, who's going to speak to you tonight. We also have the NAACP, who could not make it but wanted me to share with you that they will have a national statement as well on the issue of the jail and in support of CU Citizens' work on this issue. We have met with Dr. Kalmanoff this week, and that meeting went very well. In preparation for his return, we've agreed to host a public forum for which we will work with Debussy to make sure that it is noticed properly so that every board member who wants to come and speak and hear from the public on this matter will have an opportunity to do so. We will notify you as soon as we work out the details and dates with Dr. Kalmanoff and with Ms. Busey. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in front of the board tonight. I'm a graduate student in urban planning, resident of Urbana, and I want to talk to you about some work that a group of graduate and undergraduate students on campus did to look at the population of the county jail system on a given day in January. And we were inspired to do this work from the activism and the kind of tireless organizing that CU Citizens for Peace and Justice and other grassroots groups have been doing to elevate this issue of the county jail expansion, proposed county jail expansion. So on a Saturday afternoon in January, we gathered and started pulling data from the sheriff's website and wanted to document everyone who was in the county jail system that day to try to determine who they were, what were the racial, demographic characteristics, socioeconomic characteristics to the best that we could gather, addresses, and kind of what were the unique characteristics of people who were there that day. So we found that there were 246 individuals on January 26th, split between the satellite facility and the downtown facility. of those 246, 88% were men, 69% were African American, and of that remaining 31% that is listed as white there, that also includes Latinos and Latinas for the way that, that the sheriff records them. And may I remind you that the county as a whole is 13% African American. Of the folks incarcerated on that day, more than 42% were from the city of Champaign, about a quarter from Urbana, 8.5% from Rantoul, and of those 246, 209 were residents of Champaign County. Now, we also had access to the charges that people were incarcerated for on that day, and we found that more than half were incarcerated for nonviolent offenses. And of all of the 246 people incarcerated, more than a fifth were there for traffic violations. A third were there for other nonviolent offenses, including drug possession, credit card fraud, check forgery, and retail theft. So a solid majority are nonviolent offenses. And we also had access to the home addresses. And so using a computer software program called Geographic Information System, we plotted on a map where everyone's address was at the time that they were arrested and put in jail. And this is a zoomed-in portion that just captures the Champaign-Urbana metropolitan area. And on this map, we used 2010 census data to highlight the racial characteristics at the census tract level in that same map. And so as you can see, particularly in North Champaign and Urbana, there's a high concentration, and that overlaps with 4 census tracts that are in excess of 66% people of color. And those are neighborhoods like Garden Hills and Bristol Park. And also in southeast Urbana, and the area that it covers the Learman neighborhood, there's another strong concentration. And we also did this for Rantoul and found that in some cases, 3 or 4 people who were incarcerated were from the same block, in 2 cases in northeast Rantoul. So we wanted to highlight more what were the characteristics of those 4 census tracts that covered a significant part of North Champaign. And what we found was that although those 4 tracts are only a little more than 7% of the county's population, of the folks who are Champaign County residents who were in jail that day, those 4 tracts accounted for 25%. So more than 3.5 times what you would expect their share to be proportionally. And when we look at the socioeconomic and racial characteristics, again, of those 4 census tracts, they are predominantly low-income neighborhoods of color, which is vastly different than the county as a whole in terms of the non-white percentage and the mean household income, which is about $20,000 less. So kind of the takeaway points for us and the challenges that we would like to issue you all is to really defend why
Sir, that's your 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Russell, please.
Good evening. My name is Ann Russell, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am retired right now, but in my last job I spent 5.5 years at Francis Nelson Health Center providing mental health services. So I'm very familiar with the population that is in jail. But I am here tonight on behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I'm sure all of you probably know that the largest mental hospital in the state of Illinois is Cook County Jail. So we feel that if Champaign County wants to build another mental hospital, that maybe it should have some kind of mental health services with it. Because people with mental illness are locked up very, very often, and not for violent offenses usually either. I would like to very quickly tell a story about one of my clients and her encounter with the criminal justice system. One of the things that we see a lot is trauma. People who have histories of trauma as children. This woman grew up in the South, and her uncle began molesting her when she was 8 and introduced her to drugs. And then when she got to be 13, her mother married again. Her stepfather was a police officer. And when her mother was out at night, this man raped her, wearing his uniform, holding a gun to her head. Now, she's been up here for quite a while, and she has a hard time. She's very anxious, very nervous. But what happened to her was that one night she and her boyfriend went to a party because somebody owed them some money, and they tried to get the money. And there was a big fight, and the police came, and they took them all out to the jail. Well, they sat her down in a chair, and she was naturally very anxious and agitated. And what happened was a woman, one of the the jail people in a uniform, came and put her hands on her. And the sight of that uniform, she does not remember what happened next. She just knew that all of a sudden she realized that she was tied up. And she was on probation for that. And the only thing that calmed her down was pot. And she couldn't do that, so she was having a very, very difficult time, and she had never told anybody. I think I'm the first person she ever told about how frightened she was of people in uniforms. So I just use that as an example of what we have over there in the jail. And we would like to see some other things happen rather than just being locked up. So I thank you very much for your time.
Gregory Hayes.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and allowing us to conduct this meeting. One of the concerns that I wanted to talk about was...
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone, sir?
Sure thing. Well, my name is Gregory Hayes. I'm Vice President for Citizens with Conviction. And we're a human rights advocacy group for individuals who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. There's a number of key points that have already been talked about so far, and one of those was the disparity in the arrest rates, and those individuals have been actually locked up and being held in the county. This is one of those things that can be like overlooked. You know, when you're dealing with a percentage that's only 13% of the county, and it's a despairing number where it's above half of these individuals are being locked up, then something needs to be talked about and needs to be discussed. The lady that just spoke before us, I'm actually a student and researcher in psychology as well. And one of these things is that we talk about the conditioning and the different type of trauma and disorders that people end up having. And a lot of individuals actually do end up having some type of trauma and disorders. And these things that should be looked upon and discussed. When she's talking about Cook County being one of the largest facilitators for mental health, and they're not getting proper mental health for being facilitated correctly, we don't want to have one of those situations occur in our own town and own county, because this is the best interest of public safety. You know, a large percentage of individuals believe that public safety just depends solely on hiring more officers, building more structures. But there's a whole other realm of possibilities that exist with different programs that have been shown to actually work and be probably more beneficial to the community as a whole. You know, one thing that has been overlooked is just the simple fact of economic development in some of these areas that are actually targeted that we've seen within the map that was presented, is that this is almost pretty much what's called a red line district. And even though they say that redlining doesn't exist, when you still have, this is a targeted area, you can see the disparity, and when you look at the breakdown what the businesses are in these areas, this is something that has to be addressed. because when we start doing the statistics about what a person does, about what they're doing as far as people being reconvicted and recidivism rate, you know, those individuals who do not have jobs are 3 times more likely to commit an offense. And this is just a basic human need of actually needing to feed themselves or their families or whatnot. So if we get these individuals proper, and get these individuals hired and proper employment, this would significantly be a decrease in the arrest rates and the crime. So this is something that actually needs to be looked at and considered. A couple of things that I want to have our consultant to look at is the evidence based on the checklist versus cash-based bonding, and then just other programs to stop repeat offenders. And like I said before, you know, economic development is something that could be huge, a big piece that's possible, that's actually possible to actually bring people into the communities and actually do business and get these individuals jobs to reduce it in this manner. And I think everybody benefits from that. Actually makes our county will be actually stronger economically by actually doing these type of things. So that's something that's actually big and huge and will speak volumes, because we want to keep individuals working. We don't want to have individuals actually robbing, killing, and stealing, and doing other things, because that's not the best interest of the county as a whole. You know, we forget that we're quick to dehumanize people and demonize people about what they're doing, but we actually have to, you know, if we're in charge and actually leaders of the community, we have to do something to actually remember that these individuals actually are parents. They're somebody's father, they're somebody's mother, they're somebody's son, they're somebody's daughter. So we forget the humanistic side of these individuals. That's something that has to be in the forefront. And that's my end of remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson Kennedy Bond, please.
Hello, good evening. I've lived here all my life. I am in my 40s. Anyway, on with the story. I believe that in our jail system, it is run a lot, from what I've heard, by stereotyping, and from what I've learned in sociology in Parkland College, that's the wrong way to view people in society, and it's leading to false imprisonment. And what I mean by that is people who are arrested for simple traffic violations or something like that being put in jail. The source of the dilemma is not necessarily the people themselves, but the problems of their daily lives that they go through. Imprisonment can lead to their not solving those problems or not taking medicine properly, and that can also likely repetitively result in incarceration. I mean, repetitive jail sentences is what I mean. Life is for helping others, not isolation from society by other people. And so I believe it's been shown that we need to spend, as said earlier, our resources correctly on things like education and development of lives, not something God will look upon as a reason to go to the underworld.
Thank you, sir. Paul Muth, please.
Well, I'd like to associate myself with all the remarks that have been made so far. I haven't heard anybody speak in a way that's inappropriate, and I think it's good counsel for you to hear from the public. I think public hearings are extremely important, and I think the consulting firm ought to convene at least a few, and CUPJ has already offered to help with that, and the county board itself might do that as well. And a lot of what was already said was alternatives to incarceration, and I think that's an extremely important part. One other thing that's leaped out at me lately is to not do what Piatt County has done. They have big vans of Cook and Will County inmates coming in. I think there's an argument for due process that inmates should be incarcerated close to their communities. It's good justice, and it's good for reintegration in the community, and it shouldn't be the only growth industry in this country. And I think that if anybody's calculating the cells that they can rent out to Cook County, I think that's a bad way to go. Again, I'll try to keep it short. I just checked the weather map, and it is going to be going on for a while. So the CUPJ is also, I don't think anybody's mentioned the LEAP event. I think you've probably already gotten invitations, but I think it's important that some of your number would go to the law enforcement against prohibition events that's happening next week. Extremely important. And I'm trying to pull up something here, the report on the Global Commission on Drug Policy. This made the press a while back, but you can find it just by Googling that, Global Commission on Drug.org. People like George Shultz is the honorary chair, former Secretary of State, heads of state of, ex-heads of state, Zedillo of Mexico, Cardoso from Brazil, Cesar Gaviria from Colombia. All these people, Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, all these people are in favor of scrapping the criminalization of drug abuse and making it a counseling problem, a mental health problem, if you will. Hope I'm not stereotyped by anyone. I'm a jazz and cocktails kind of guy, but thanks for your attention.
Gilberto Rozak.
Good evening. Please excuse my head cold. I'm a professor of anthropology and Latino studies at Urbana, at UIUC. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I am a transplant myself from El Paso, Texas. And I'm here today on behalf of the Immigration Forum. We are a grassroots organization composed of immigrants, students, clergy, service providers, labor union representatives, local residents, community organizations, taxpayers, and voters concerned about the progress and plight of immigrants in our community. We have been active in tackling tough questions of immigration and law enforcement, including pushing for the passage of driver's license for immigrants in Illinois, and presenting to the CU community a report on secure communities. The latter is a federal initiative between immigration and customs enforcement and local law enforcement that has been subject to much criticism. We asked the sheriff to withdraw from secure communities. After careful consideration and much study, he agreed. What we want is an immigrant-friendly community where the hardworking men and women, husbands and wives, sons and daughters of immigrants can live and prosper. And that is why I'm here. The Immigration Forum steadfastly opposes the proposal of the construction of the new jail cells. Rather, we believe the county must change the priorities in terms of public safety. Slivers of $20 million can do a lot. Job training, mental health services, substance abuse treatments, reentry programs for people returning home from prison, and measures to address racial discrepancies in the jail population are but a few. We urge the board to work with the community to make these alternatives to incarceration a reality, and we fear that new empty cells will generate unnecessary pressures to fill them. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Enoch Miller, please.
How you doing? I go by Martell. I'm glad that I get to face the council, and I don't know where to start, but I'm gonna start with this. If we build a new jail, it's gonna get filled, and it's gonna be filled with African-American men. And I feel the county board ought to look at, instead of building the jail, we'd take $20 million and do a lot in this community. In this community right now, we got, and that's 18-year-olds to 35-year-olds, we got like 46% unemployed. And public safety money should be changed on how we can fix the unemployment problem in this community. You know, we can take $20 million and start a training program. And how to change the community is to put in training, put in early child learning. We ain't got 100% early child learning in this community. The county board can control that money. There's so much you can do with $20 million than build a jail. We got 2 new jails in this community. We got a jail that was built in the 80s and a jail that was built in the 90s. So we got 2 new jails. Most of the jails in Illinois are more than 75 years old, if you want, and y'all can look into that. We got 2 new jails, and with the consultant here, he can look into that. So we don't need no new jail. We need new programs. We need a mental health center in Champaign. The sheriff already said that he had mental patients, had more mental patients in jail than he needs. So we need a reentry program for people coming out of prison to stop the people from circulating back in the jail system. So y'all gonna set precedent for other counties if we do the right thing with the county board by taking public safety money and put it in the people, not in incarceration. You know, educate instead of incarcerate. And that's all I'm gonna say to y'all. Thank you.
Aaron Ammons, please.
I do like this new setup. It's kind of cool. All right. I didn't like having to speak to that big brick thing there. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is my first time back since the new folks have been seated. So again, congratulations to everyone. And so tonight I'm here basically representing the Breakfast Club. And so one of the things that we've looked at several different pieces about this assessment and about the proposal around building a new jail. And so I wanted you, one of the things that I just passed out is a flyer about what Paul Muth raised, CU Citizens for Peace and Justice, along with Citizens with Conviction and a whole host of co-sponsors, are bringing to our city an organization called LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, along with another organization called Efficacy, the founder is an internationally recognized drug reform, he works on drug reform policies. So they will be here February the 28th and March 1st from 5:30 to 8:30 at Levis Faculty Center on the 28th of February, and then 5:30 to 8:30 at Salem Baptist Church. There is also an event for elected officials who would like to come. It's going to take place on February the 28th from noon to 2 at the Chamber of Commerce, the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce. So this is an opportunity for you to ask questions to these individuals and try to develop a new mindset that's outside of the box of tough on crime that many elected officials have been locked into. I have spoken with the sheriff. I've spoken with Ms. Reitz. We've spoken to the chiefs. They will all be in attendance at along the way of some of these meetings, and we appreciate that because I think it shows that they are willing to at least listen to a new perspective, a new approach to things. So a few of the things that we looked at that we think can be very beneficial is certainly employment. Employment is a huge piece. There's another book called When Work Disappears that we would strongly encourage you all to look at. The impact that lack of employment has on any place. We can look at Danville, we can look at Detroit, we can look at East St. Louis, various different places when work disappears. And HUMCO has already left. So what can we do in partnership with the University of Illinois, with the cities, the county. What can we do to bring large employer back to our county that would mean hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs? Maybe that's a little ambitious, but something to that degree. That is indeed, it has to be considered a means of addressing the issues of public safety. But we cannot legislate morality. We cannot take individuals who, for instance, one of the statistics that we learned through LEAP is that a little over 1% of the American population in the last 100 years is addicted to illegal substances. That hasn't changed since the war on drugs. It hasn't changed since making drugs illegal. That little over 1% is addicted. That's not who's using, but that's who's addicted to illegal substances. And so trying to arrest our way out of that, that's not working. And some of the most alarming things for us, when we look at this tough on crime mindset that many elected officials get locked into, is that's what leads to an acceptance of incarcerating low-level drug offenders as well as nonviolent criminals, folks who commit. So that's just, everybody gets wrapped up into that, along with those when we don't have the appropriate mental health services. When those individuals commit crimes, they end up also incarcerated. So if we were to look into this proposal that LEAP will be offering, for instance, about regulation and control of illegal substances, we would take the profit motive out of the streets. We would not incriminate and criminalize so many individuals for drug possession or drug use, as well as create the opportunity for us to put money in different places so we don't have to spend so much money on incarceration or in the criminal justice system. I do believe, if I'm correct, we either spent last year or projected to spend this year somewhere around $64 million in Champaign County on criminal justice. So that's it's an alarming number to us, and we think that there's so many different places that we could spend money instead of just on criminal justice. I think the last point for me is I certainly do support the public hearing. We are looking forward to always having the dialogue, and we hope that you all are seeing that the efforts, the organizing efforts that are bringing scholarship and real research into these issues, that you might be able to use that information so that we can come up with something more productive. Thank you for your time.
That's 5 minutes. Thank you. Dontre Evans.
Hello, my name is Dante Evans. This is my first meeting. I'm kind of nervous, but anyways, I'm speaking on behalf of Brother Aaron Marlin with the Breakfast Club. Also a former... Get closer? Okay. Closer. All right, Dante Evans. I'm on behalf of the Breakfast Club with Marlin and Aaron. Also, a former inmate of the county jail and Department of Corrections. I just want to say, when you let out of prison, you know, it's kind of like you just let out, you know. They kind of say they're helping you, like, your last few months to get out, but I don't really see it as being help. And as everybody talking about, you guys got money to build a new county jail. I was arrested, and I got sent to prison for a half ounce of marijuana. 3 years. So all I'm saying is that when guys get out, we need more things to help us stay out. And there's really nothing to help us stay out because you just put out. You just let out. So as you guys say, you got $20 million to build a county jail. It's not really the answer. We need resources. We need people to give us a backbone. And I'm grateful to find the Breakfast Club because it really gave me a perspective on life that there's somebody out here to help you, you know? And with these guys, and they show you that there's something a lot better out here. And just imagine if we had 20 more of these guys, 20 more of these programs, about how many more guys you can touch. I'm just one, you know? And I found these guys, and I'm very grateful for that. So with that said, the county jail is not the answer. The resources is the answer. And we really need it because, like I said, you just let out. You know them little, have you ever seen on Discovery Channel when they find a little animal in the jungle or whatever, and they help them get back to health, and then they just let them back out there? That situation is very much similar. They just let us back out there. Thank you.
Malcolm Mitchell.
My name is Marlon Mitchell. I want to thank everybody for braving the elements and coming out this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the prison ministry. I'm a member of, well, actually, I'm the director of the prison ministry at Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, which is located here in Champaign at 808 East Bradley. And what I want to do, or what I wanted to address is, I want to put a face to the presentation that was given by the Planners Network. For 26 years, I've been a part of the Garden Hills neighborhood. 26 years. The last 10, I've owned my home. I stay in the Garden Hills neighborhood, and I've seen it get progressively worse. I've just seen things get progressively worse. Back in July of 2011, there was a young lady that was shot and killed in the Garden Hills neighborhood. Now, she was a member of my church, a devout member, 20 years old with 2 kids. So I said all that to say, I'm watching this trend, and it's trending in the wrong direction. I mean, there's violence out there, but what do you expect when you got people that's in despair in a neighborhood that has no outlets? The socioeconomic conditions are a lot different than the other neighborhoods. Greg talked about the red line district. Garden Hills is a red line district. And it's not because it's bad people there. It's people that are in despair, people with their backs up against the wall, their hands in the air. But it's not because we're giving up. It's because we're reaching for a higher ground. And without these opportunities and these resources, these jobs that we can create with $20 million, I mean, that's a lot of money. And that 95-5 split, that's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. But I said all that to say we're trending in the wrong direction. I can go on and on about the statistics because I'm a statistical major. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to statistics. But it's not just reading the presentation. I'm seeing this in my neighborhood. I have a nephew that's sitting in the county jail. He's been over there since July of 2011. He's still sitting there and sitting there. I visited him a week and a half ago. I asked him. I let him talk, and I just asked him one simple question. What are you going to do when you get out? He looked me dead in the eye. He said, Uncle, I don't know. I really don't know. So you take that in consideration with the population that's sitting in the county jail, which is what, 63% African American? And you look at me, and you look at some of the other people in this room, as Dante suggested, we need opportunities. And that 95-5 split is where it starts. And the $20 million that you're allocating, or that proposal, the ridiculous proposal, that's not the answer. The answer is education, economic development, job opportunities, and things that aren't going to be sustainable. We can go on, building penitentiaries, prisons, jails. That's just a warehouse. It's a warehouse. I'm here to tell you because I've lived it. I've seen it. And I challenge each and every one of you just go through the Garden Hills neighborhood and watch and just look at the boarded up houses. You got structures that people are living in that shouldn't be living in. You got kids just hanging out doing nothing because they don't have an outlet. This is everyday life. And we got a Fortune 50 company that's right there situated in that community. And for some reason, for the life of me, I cannot understand why we don't put into that community. So I said that all to say this. We need to build people and programs, not penitentiaries and prisons. We need to build jobs instead of jails. So I want to thank you all for coming out once again and braving the elements, because it was rough for me to get here, but that's how dedicated and committed I am. And I want to thank all the groups that are supporting, that are standing in unison as a coalition against this county jail, because that's not the answer. Really not the answer. I mean, the jail is 16 years old. That's brand new. So I want to thank you all once again.
Is there any other public participation at this point? I want to thank all of you for coming out in this weather to speak your place to the county board. We really appreciate your efforts. And I'm now closing public participation at this point. Is there any communication, Mr. Carter? Go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to know, when they come in and speak, but nobody from this body says anything back. Okay, they just got through making their speech. Now, do anybody here have the authority to respond to them?
Our rules state, Mr. Carter, that we can't have public participation
That's
into
what I
reaction.
mean. See, I want them to know.
Sorry.
See, that's the problem.
Okay.
That's the problem. I'm going to take a little time. I've been hearing the same old speech for 50 years, right here in this community. No change has been made. And some of the folks I'm looking out there, the same old folks keep coming up here, making the same speech. And when they leave, nothing happened.
Well, Mr. Carter, we have a study going on right now to try and correct some of the problems that some of these public participants have discussed tonight. We'll hear a little bit from that gentleman who heads up the ILPP study, and maybe perhaps he can give us a little insight.
Okay,
But,
I appreciate it, Mr. John,
okay.
but I just want to let them know that the speech they bring to the bar have been here many times, ladies and gentlemen. This is nothing new. It's been here many times. And the same old thing just happened over and over. When you leave, the whole thing dies. You don't get any, nothing happened. So I'm at the point of saying it's time you change your dialogue.
All right, thank you. Mr. Carter?
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, is there any communication from the county board? Oh, okay. Gentlemen, Mr. Alex?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, we had a meeting where Mr. Quisenberry and I attended. Dr. Kalmanoff from ILPP was there. Dennis Roberts, the Urbana City Council, was there, and two representatives, Robin Arbiter and Bill Brown from the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee. We had a great meeting yesterday. I think there were a lot of issues raised, many of them issues primarily related to the Learman neighborhood, of course, located immediately south of Brookings, and this is, in fact, our neighborhood as the county facilities, or the county facility is concerned. But they raised many of the same issues that were raised tonight by community groups. I mean, issues of jobs, issues of economic development, and so forth. And I wanted to thank them publicly for their comments and hope that we can continue that dialogue. And in addition, if I could follow up to something Mr. Carter said, there is not a member of this board whose email address and phone number is not a matter of public record. And I hope I speak for most of the members of this board, if not all of them, when I say we're always happy to hear from people. And just because we don't, give speeches during public comment doesn't mean that, our doors and phones and email lines are not open. I'm happy to talk to anybody in the community who wants to talk to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, we've heard some comments tonight about thanking people for coming out on a bad night. I'd like to thank the public for coming out on a bad night as well. But mostly I'd like to thank our staff members who are out making it possible for us to get in here. I know county staff are out plowing right now, out working. So I'd like to thank their efforts to help make this possible and their everyday efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Mitchell, did you have a?
I just want to give a little brief report for the Champaign County Convention and Visitors Bureau. The county is a stakeholder in the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the county has just noted that there are 2,460 jobs in the county that are tied to the travel industry. In last year, there was $58.8 million in travel-generated payroll, which accounted for $4.64 million in local tax revenues, and that was a 3.2% increase over the previous year. Direct spending was $283 million pumped into the county, which was a 6.4% increase over the previous year. Meetings and conventions are subtle in appearance, but the economic impact is huge. A 3-day conference for 150 attendees creates a midweek overnight stay worth about $54,000, and economic impact adds up to over millions over the year. So just some things that are in the pipeline is again, the marathon. And State Farm has become a sponsor, additional sponsor for that. So just to be noted, the wrestling tournament just finished up last weekend, and all hotel rooms in Champaign County were sold out. So I think that I serve on that board, so I just wanted to bring to our board members, if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. But the Convention and Visitors Bureau is busy working, and their big event is going to be in June for the Bloomington Gold Corvette Show, and be bringing more information as that comes along, but I'm happy to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I have two announcements. First one is I've been in consultation with Mr. Steve Carter concerning Champaign and Champaign County on the sole source water aquifer, the Bahaman Aquifer. We now have 15 partners. We started with 5. We now have 15 partners in the Midwest part of Champaign County and the state of Illinois working towards the sole source water acquisition for our Bahaman Aquifer. Secondly, I chair the Champaign Consortium. We had a meeting today, and we're working on, this consortium works on training youth between the ages of 16 and 24 in new jobs and new training. We'll be convening shortly, working with manufacturers and corporations in training these new people for the jobs that are available today. We'll be working in cooperation with federal, state, and local grants, working with manufacturers to train those displaced workers in the jobs that are needed for today's technology and manufacturing. And I want you to know that we are working towards the goal of giving every youth the right proper training so that they can get a job here in Champaign County and in the 4 counties that we work with. Any other communication at this point? Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. We'll have approval of the minutes. I need a motion for December 20th, January 24th, and January 29th.
I move approvals of the minutes as printed and corrected on the handout on the desk.
Okay. There are 2 corrections on the minutes. December 20th minutes, it's just a name change. It was public participation for a gentleman by the name of
Jeremy.
We noted his name is John, and the same on January 24th. So the change is just the name change. They want to correct that. So is there any other discussion on the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Mr. Kavanaugh, would you please take the table? We're going to ask Dr. Alan Kavanaugh of ILPP. I want you to understand here, Mr. Kavanaugh is not bringing us a report tonight. He's here with his organization working on the needs study for our county, and He's here at this point to answer some questions if you have any, but he's not giving us any official report at this point. They're deep, about halfway through the study, and they're working very hard to dance to the music. Okay? All right. So Lorraine's working on it. You got it, Lorraine? Okay. All right. I would like Carol, please. Thank you. All right, Mr. Kalmanoff, would you like to make a statement before we ask any questions, sir?
Yeah, is anybody going back towards the Eastland Suites that I can follow so I can find the road? So, good evening, everybody. Good evening, members of the general public. I enjoyed listening to your...
Sir, we can't hear you. Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Yeah, well, it's hard to do that turning backwards. But good evening, everybody. It's nice to see such a big turnout and so much interest in a topic that we're working on doing a study for. I'll give you a quick progress report on the study. We started in November. I guess I'm pretty pleased with the idea that I was able to convince the county manager to start us early with just a little trickle of money because there wasn't the right budget allocation until this year, but we were able to get the data and start work over the holidays when it's awful hard to get information and get people from the county to...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Cal, if you want to speak to the public, would you like to sit up here? We got an extra chair, if that'd be better, so you could face the room.
You can then, thank you, Chris. Okay.
I'm happy to sit up here. I know my wife drives better than I do in snow, so. So I'll start again. Good evening. I'm glad to see you all. We started the study right on time, or early actually, and we're making really good progress. There are a couple things I guess I want to stress. I haven't sort of started off with the idea of a proposal for a $20 million jail. I started off by looking, and when I say I've got a team of consultants and staff, many of whom have been here. We start off with the idea that there is a system, a criminal justice system. It introduces people who have been arrested for crimes into a system. And the system is a flow-through system. So people come in the front door. That doesn't mean they necessarily go to the jail, but they get some sort of official citation, at least. Some people don't go any further than that. Then the next step is transport to jail. And it's important to know that we are examining that first decision because lots of places don't take people who are misdemeanors to jail unless there's a danger of a continuing offense or a danger to evidence or a danger to a witness or a failure to identify or a real good likelihood that that person won't show up to face the charges in the ticket. So it's an immediate opportunity to get out, and it's a good thing to examine to see who gets out and how they get out and how it works and how well it works, kind of like a tune-up. The next stage is somebody does get into the jail. There's a thing called pretrial release. And pretrial release is as old as the criminal justice system. It was the old sheriff in London and England. You deposit your cow in his corral, and then you'd wait for the circuit judge to come through town on a horse, and your cow was the security that you show up when the judge showed up and face the charges. Today we have something called OR, which is like that. You put your reputation on the line if you don't have a cow, and you get released on pretrial if you are a good risk to appear. We're examining that aspect of your system because, as with many jails in this country, your jail has an awful lot of people in there pre-trial. They're not convicted, but they're not out, and the decision has been made by a judge to either set a bond or let them out on own recognizance with just their word that they're going to come back. But it's a decision we're examining because Nationally, that decision is usually made with a risk assessment instrument of some kind. So we're following it right on through, and I won't bore you with the lecture I like to give my law students, but it's just like a railroad track with spurs coming off of it. And for us, systems types, we're examining each little spur to see what the flow is, who's getting out and who's not, and how it's done, and how objectively it's done. Obviously, those of you who are concerned with racial disparity, that's one of the main issues, is to see how objectively those decisions are made. It's not necessarily probative of racial disparity that there are more black people than white people in the jail. It has a lot to do with the behavior and the crimes and the patterns and the calls for service. Those census tracts, I'd be very interested if you feel like going back to look at those census tracts to see what the call for service load is in those same districts. In other words, there are police calls first, often, but there's also self-initiated police activity. Those are all patterns we're very interested in looking at. And really we have no bias. We're coming from out of town and doing an objective study, or as objective as we're humanly possible of conducting. Now, I don't want to talk too much because I prefer to take questions, but I'll just say that I have had quite a few meetings with what are, I guess the right label is, community groups of different kinds. There's some overlap between the various community groups, and I will remain available, particularly if I have some notice and can get a plane fare I can afford, to come back and meet with community groups as requested. I don't think I'm in a position to convene in your town a meeting or a hearing or whatever it is y'all want, but if there is one, I'll be there. And I committed to that in the presentation I made when the job went down, and I'm sticking with it. All I ask is that it not be tomorrow morning when I'm halfway across the country, but other than that, I'll be there. And I will say there's been nothing but cooperation, not only from community folks that I talk to who have opinions and thoughts and ideas about what we ought to do, and most of those suggestions about what we ought to do, we are doing. Most of them were in our proposal to begin with, but we're taking suggestions and doing different things when asked. But I also had a lot of good cooperation from the criminal justice establishment. And if you think about it for a minute, if I come to your house and ask to check out your closet and your dresser and make sure things are neat and stacked in order and all that, you're probably not going to be thrilled to see me. And that's the same thing, although these folks have the public trust, it's different than your house. They're elected or appointed and should be available for inspection and accountability and all that. But beyond that, should be available. People have been real nice and real forthcoming. And I probably have demonstrated that I'm a fairly direct and candid person. Commissioner James will attest to that. And I have sometimes, hold my breath to see if I'm going to get somebody irritated at me for being so blunt, and I haven't had that happen yet. Well, a little bit, but it's all very cooperative. I'll take your questions, anything I can do to help you understand the study. We'll probably come in sometime late March, early April, mid-April, late April. I'm not ready to even say when, with a draft report. That draft report will not be cast in concrete. We're used to changing our reports from the input and questions and comments of all the players and all the stakeholders, and trying to do the best job we can. So, what are your questions? What are your comments? What can I?
All right, we'll take questions from the board. Ms. Petrie.
First of all, thank you for being here right now and sharing our first wonderful snow with us.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
I am looking forward to your report because I'm sure it will cause all of us to stretch our thinking and rearranging our thinking on this. Second, I appreciate the fact that the Citizens for Peace and Justice have stepped forward to arrange a public meeting in collaboration with your schedule. And I hope that that's not the only public meeting that we have, and that maybe the county board would also sponsor a public meeting. And the last, as I listened to Michelle Alexander talk last night, she's the author of The New Jim Crow, she did mention immigrants, and I'm glad to hear somebody bring that we do have that situation in our community, and it's something for us not to fold into our considerations. Thank you.
Mr. Carter.
Is it Mr. Kavanaugh?
Cal, everybody calls me Cal.
Okay.
From California.
Thank you and all the citizens that came out in this bad night. But, you know, you have a good dialogue, but I don't know, you're going to have a hard time. I'm going to just tell you a little something. Most of the people live in America don't know America. They don't. And I'm saying this because the bad people come here from other countries for the good life, but when they get here, they come and put themselves in the same prejudice situation that they ran from. So what I'm getting at, all the stuff you bringing up here, how you gonna change the atmosphere of this country when that's your problem? It's 2013, and sometimes I feel the heat from presidents is just as bad as it was 100 years ago. All the guys a new suit on. And what I'm saying is, you're going to have to convince some people in this country that they got to get away from that. It's killing America. As a society, now look at the chairman, I'm going to cut my speech short.
If you have a question, please.
What really got me is 50 years ago, when we was a great society, was paying young women to have more babies. More babies to have more age you get. Think about that. Just think about that. I'm putting that element in, just follow it on down. Follow the trend on down in America. You got a guy to have a little thing of powder. He go to jail more than somebody kill somebody. He stays there longer. Now, when he come out, it stays on him. He can't get rid of it. He don't have he can't vote, can't get no job. So what I'm trying to say is the mindset that we have in this country that you got to work on. But you're not going to get anywhere.
Thank you. I do think I'm going to get somewhere.
It's a hard problem.
Okay.
Mr. J.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Cal, there's been something that's been near and dear to my heart. In fact, the public talked about it a little bit tonight, that our jails aren't really that old, but they're not in very good condition because we have not maintained our building systems here very well. You alluded to that some in some of your discussions. How do you see our jails as far as maintenance?
Well, you know, I'm reading reports rather than being an engineer, but your jails have a maintenance problem. The older jail has the worser problem. And whatever comes out of this study, there certainly needs to be a recommendation for some sort of systematic maintenance of a scarce resource that's so expensive. I'm going to take the opportunity to supplement the issue of the facility and the maintenance of the facility by making a comment about the cost issues of jails. Obviously, if you spend any number of dollars on a building and you don't paint it and the wood rots, you've wasted your money. And so if you don't waterproof the building and the water sifts through the concrete, you've wasted your money. But it's important to note that the real costs here are not the building. If you build a $20 million jail, it's going to cost you about that much, or maybe less, maybe half that much each year to staff. And just think about that for a minute. So whatever number of beds you build, you have to think about building it every year. Building it every year, coming back every year. That's not to say don't build it. That's just to say get ready. You got to get ready to maintain it, and you got ready to get ready to staff it. Operations cost is the name of the game. So, of course, looking at your budget and your relatively low crime rate and your situation overall, one would want to look for a full range of alternatives and figure out which people can most effectively be sanctioned or punished. And that raises the issue of what's the purpose of a jail? What's the reason to have a cage for a human being? And there are some reasons, and there are some human beings that need to be in a cage. And so the issue is to figure out how to pick the least number of people to protect your community from that very expensive solution, and then find less expensive and more potent punishments that are rehabilitative as well as sanctions for folks that you can afford. And it's kind of the maintenance thing, the facility thing, the other ways to punish are all a continuum of things, and that's what we're working on, is a plan that fits your population, your projections, your demand. Maintenance is a big issue. Maintenance is a big issue.
Mr. Hartke.
Thank you, Dr. Cal. I really appreciate your comments
How about
of
if we
last
just go
night.
with Cal?
Okay, Cal, I'll just go with that. I appreciate your comments of last night, and some of the things you spoke really got me to thinking. I know you've been all over the world and seen a lot of jail systems, many that are probably worse than ours, and certainly some that are better. But as far as our criminal justice system goes, could you speak to, I know this is very early, but how we handle mental illness in our county, and do you feel that we're addressing it properly, and do you think that that's a way that we can reduce numbers and help people in ways that don't put them in violent situations that need counseling and help through mental illness preparedness?
Well, I can't because I don't know enough yet. I'll just make one comment about that. In another county I'm working in, actually it's in Bernalillo County, Albuquerque, New Mexico, they've had upwards of a dozen shootings this year of people who are mentally ill by the police in situations where the right kind of training perhaps and the right kind of alternative mental health facilities in the community might have avoided that. You have an example of a mother calling the cops because her schizophrenic son is crazy, out of control, and the cops come, and before things are over, the kid goes out on a stretcher. That happens all over this country, and mental health issues and problems are rampant in the criminal justice system because starting with President Reagan and then moving down through many different leaders at the national and state level, including major cuts in Illinois, folks have closed mental health institutions, which weren't necessarily the perfect solution either, by the way. And there were some good reasons to close them and do that kind of work closer to the community where folks came from. Nonetheless, you have a lot of people in your jail system with mental health issues. If you bring them in, you've got the obligation to treat them in such a way that you don't make it worse. You got the obligation to put them on their meds that they were on the outside. When you let them loose, you've got the obligation to making sure they go out with the meds to continue. And that system of continuity of care or whatever is a difficult one in this county, and I'm just learning it. So I can't say much more than that.
Mr. Langenheim.
Has there been any consideration of establishing separate facilities for people who would otherwise be in low-level mental institutions if they were available?
Well, we're certainly looking at that kind of alternative among many other alternatives, yes.
Something like using the downtown jail for people in that
Well,
position.
now you took it to a different level. Using the downtown jail would make you and I crazy if we spent the night.
Ah, yes, but
So let's get real. You don't use the downtown jail as a place that's ideal to put mental health people. There is a need to improve the housing of mental health people in this county and to deal with that population in the jail. There's also a need to deal with the ostensible legal issues that you already have with the downtown jail, and there are many.
okay. I'm asking for information. I'm not preaching.
Oh, no, nor am I.
No.
Mr. Richards?
Well, Dr. Kalmanov,
Cal.
Cal, sorry, we're not
in California. I don't.
You get it.
Can't get
You
that
get
to
it.
sink in. I want to bounce off some of the things you brought up the last couple days, and especially since you said you don't have any real answers for us, bounce some things off us, because it seems to me that the county board, which you haven't been around for, the last year has been having the wrong conversation. The Community Justice Task Force has started, and every month we see a bigger problem, and this county board has been having a conversation about how many beds do we need, how much money do we need, what do we need on bricks, and yet every time this conversation comes up, we have questions coming to us like, what can we do, what are we going to do about the mentally ill? And the question is, right now, we've got a lot of well-meaning people in this system, and we don't have any money for anything. We have questions like, what are we going to do for people who are nonviolent offenders, but who are stuck in jail because they don't have the money to get out? What are we, crime is consistent in this community. We are not a police force. The question is, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about nonviolent offenders? What are we going to do about our offenders who are out on parole, or how to divert first-time offenders? Because the answer is, right now, we really don't have the resources to do too many programs for these people, even though we know, especially for first-time offenders, that is going to keep them from coming back to our jail. So my question is, you've talked a little bit about programming. What are some of the things that we should be looking at doing instead of getting stuck in the same old nationwide problems that we have been stuck in, because nobody likes the current status quo?
So let me pick and choose about amongst the various things you said that I can actually speak to at this early point. First of all, I don't believe that it's true that you don't have any money for mental health. I saw a budget last night for $4 million for your mental health board, and that's a current budget. So it may be more important to look at how it's being spent rather than whether you don't have it or have it, and that's what we're trying to do. The issue of alternatives to incarceration, you do have alternatives to incarceration in this county, and it may very well turn out you need a whole lot more. I don't think that this is the right time for me to wing it until I have all my apples in order, so to speak. The issue of recidivism and keeping people out speaks to primarily to reentry programs. And you have a touch of that, but not much. I was shocked last night when the gentleman, I forget your name now, but you're with the prison ministry, Marlon Mitchell, right, spoke, and he asked sincerely and with some concern about where one would get reentry services. Didn't get an answer. So obviously there are gaps that need to be looked at. And I plan to look at them. Now, do I have an answer tonight? No, I don't. I can't answer your question. If you are correct, I haven't been here. If you guys have been debating how many beds all along since the study that we have was procured, that seems like kind of silly, because you have to wait for the study if you want some technical help to answer that question. Now, while we're talking about beds and numbers, let's make a distinction. You have a certain number of beds, and they're not full. So right on the surface, before you get to Commissioner Jay's question about maintenance, you don't need new beds because your beds aren't full. You're not overcrowded. You have a presiding judge who made it his business to make sure that you wouldn't be overcrowded by setting up weekend arraignments. We never see that. That's a fabulous thing that you do. Cases move through this system. People don't get hung up with 6, 8, 12, 15 continuances as they do in some places where I do studies. That said, if you start off with how many beds you have, then you might say, well, how many beds do you need to wreck because they're just not worth maintaining any longer or staffing any longer because they're so inefficient? They're requiring every day a plumbing repair, or they require 10 positions for one small row of beds when another design would require one position for 100 beds, et cetera. That's a different question. So I like to ask the question, first of all, what's the demand? Can it be lowered? Are there alternatives? And then when you're done, how many beds do you need? Then I like to say, well, how many good beds do you have? How many beds that are secure, relatively staff efficient to operate, not fatally flawed with maintenance disaster? And subtract that out and then say, well, how many more do you need, if any? And that's sort of how we're going to go about doing it. But there's a thing called replacement beds. And I'll bet you when this is all done, there may be some of those. Because you've got some beds you need to get rid of. If you get rid of more beds than you have a demand for, you're going to need to replace some. Maybe you won't. I don't know. But we're going to have to start breaking down the word beds. Existing beds, needed beds, beds that you can keep because they're staff efficient and effective security-wise, beds you may have to replace. And I don't have answers to not a single one of those questions today. But
you have a question, Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I just want to point this to my board member. Why is it we spend $6,119 to educate an individual? $36,000 to put him in jail. Look at that. I'm telling you, I just throwed it out to you. It's the mindset of America, man. You got people sitting around 10 years ahead of time drawing up these little entities that to put people in these positions. That's wrong.
All right, Mr. Carter, we really appreciate your passion here, but Mr. Kalmanoff came a long way. It's really bad outside.
I'm just trying to help him
I
because he didn't
understand.
ask
I understand that, but if you have a question, please ask it. If not, let's move on to another questionnaire. Is there anyone else who has questions for Mr. Kalmanoff at this point? Okay. Dr. Cal. What's that?
Lorraine.
I'm sorry. Okay.
I want to ask Cal if the racial disparity here in Champaign County have anything to do with the racial disparity that is seen in our jail population and in the hiring practice of the law enforcement here in Champaign.
well, that's a nice, tame, quiet question. It'll give me no trouble at all. So look, you know, it's your town, and you know in your hearts where the racism is. We all live in a racist society. There's no question about that. And I guess I disagree with Commissioner Carter that it's getting worse, but that's his prerogative. The racism of this society is also paralleling a classism in a sense, because rich folks don't pretty much go to jail, and poor folks do. But as I say to my law students, and I want to take a second to say something personal, you know, I got this study awarded, and I took a vacation waiting for the contract to start and everything to get going. I came back from my vacation, and my bookkeeper had stolen 20 grand in cash and forged a couple checks and left me in a big hole. And, you know, I thought about that because I'm a criminal justice consultant. And I thought about her 3 kids, because I'm crazy about kids, and some of you who I've talked to know that at the ripe old age of 70, I want another one. I've got 2 already. And I thought about the fact that she walked off with that money, and what was I going to do? Just sort of say, well, she deserves my understanding. Let her have it. So I've had to sort of wrestle with the DA about filing charges, the cops, gone through it all. And I've made a real effort to get a deal where she plea bargains and pleads guilty and gets probation and signs some sort of an agreement to pay it back over time. But I want to tell you something. She is an upper, shall we say, upper, lower class person. She is making, before she stole my money, about 28 grand a year. That's not a lot of money. but with 3 kids, but her husband had a job too. But what happens when people who have jobs steal from people who have jobs? Generally, you don't end up with somebody in a jail cell, because we people who have jobs, when we get mad at those people who steal from us who have jobs, we sue their ass. I go to court, civil court, and I file a claim. And I say, took my money, here's the proof, give it back, get an agreement. We don't need the jail. We don't need a criminal court. There's a crime there, but I don't have to prosecute her. I don't have to go to the police. In this case, I wanted to have that crime over her head, but I didn't want her to go to jail because of those 3 kids. So I just want you all to think a little bit about the last time you got ripped off your cell phone or your computer or your TV, or somebody walked with your lawnmower. And think about your remedies. Think about the person who took it. Think about the function of a jail in a society. Not just a jail, but other kinds of punishment. Because if I can do it, I'm going to make sure she's punished if she can't pay me back. And I'm going to make sure she doesn't go to jail and leave those 3 kids in foster homes. And I have a tough time as a victim to make that happen. So if you all going to hold public hearings or meetings, or while I'm not around have community meetings, talk about what the purpose of a jail is, and start off with saying, I was victimized. What happened to you? There's not a person in this room, not a person, I believe, who hasn't had something stolen. Now, how did you feel after that? Did you want to go up and give him a kiss? Or did you want to see some sort of revenge or some sort of equalization of that wrong or some sort of payback or something? And that's what the human instinct is, and that's why we have a criminal justice system, so that people don't take individual vengeance. Because the first night I wanted to kill her. I had trusted her with so much. And I'm not a rich guy, and she walked off with my money. But ask yourself, what's the purpose of a jail? What's the purpose of other punishments? I myself don't think much of 3 hots, a cot, and a cable TV as a punishment. I don't want anybody in a jail just for punishment if they can be punished for real. Punished for real means go out and shovel the snow in front of some old person's house who can't do it. For long enough, you got some blisters and you're thinking about your theft. That's my values. But, of course, I come from California. But, you know, you got to think about what this is really about. It's about social control of a kind that protects each of us. You got to think about who the thief is or who the criminal is. If they're on your front porch and you're terrified, that might be a case for a cage. If they're walking down the street and it's a property crime, nonviolent crime of opportunity by a young person, you might want to think about, how can we teach this kid how it is to lose something that you worked for, et cetera, et cetera. So I just don't want to make a big religious speech out of it, but I just, it's important to think about what is the purpose of a jail.
Thank you, Cal. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you very, very much. We really do appreciate you being here this evening and this week and helping us to understand a little bit more about the problem.
Don't thank me. Just drive me home.
Be my pleasure. Absolutely. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Number 13 is a standing committees. This is for your information. This is a summary of action taken on facilities, ELOC, and highway. And now let's move on to the areas of responsibility. Mr. Quisenberry on policy, please.
Yes, Mr. Kurtz. I'd like to recommend adoption of resolution number 8426 regarding the Champaign County Sheriff's Merit Commission, and I so move.
Second.
Any second, Mr. Langenheim. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, I recommend the adoption, the Policy Committee recommends adoption of resolution number 8427, authorizing first additional renewal year for consulting services agreement with Gallagher Benefit Services, and I so move.
Have a second? Second, Mr. James. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Could you please move outside? Public participation is over. Could you please move outside so we can do business here on the county board? Thank you. Mr. Quisenberry?
Next, policy area recommends adoption of resolution number 8428, appointing EMA coordination responsibility to the Champaign County Sheriff, and I so move.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Jay. Any discussion? Mr. Alex?
We had a brief discussion about this at the committee of the whole meeting. I see the sheriff is here. We just wanted to see if, Sheriff, you had anything to say about this?
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to say. Ms. Busey said that number one, you guys wanted to meet the guy who's been running it and probably will, and that's Lieutenant Shane Cook, who is next to me. In January, when we knew Mr. Carlson was leaving, he started learning the job. He's also doing all his other functions. February 1st, he took over. I would like him to take just a minute or two and talk about whether you give it to us or whether you keep it. There is an exercise coming up in April, and I'd like Shane to talk about it just so you know what's going on. I'm going to say one other thing. Assuming that you give us the responsibility, our plan is to hire one more civilian, much like Mr. Carlson. A lieutenant or above in my office will be responsible for it. Anticipating your questions, do I need more staff than that? Well, if you had enough money, yeah, I'd like to hire a part-time secretary. If you don't, Teresa has gladly stepped into the breach, sort of. So we'll get by, and Ms. Busey's offered the clerical staff out here to continue to help us, which is what has been going on in the past. So unless you have specific questions for me, I would like Shane to talk about it, and he'll answer any questions you have, too.
All right, can you hear me? I got a little head cold, so I'll be short. I've been working with EMA directly with John Carlson and John Dwyer for the past year, and those were on certain committees and just exercises. And then when Mr. Carlson decided to go a different route, different adventure for himself, then I came into it a little more full-time. With that being said, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there is an April exercise in Rantoul. It's going to be the biggest exercise in central Illinois as far as EMA is concerned. I can't really get into the details of the exercise because there's members right here in this room that are going to be presented a problem on the day of, and they're going to have to facilitate and make sure that they handle the problem accordingly. So the exercise is going to be at the state level, it's going to be at the FEMA level, and we're also going to have the National Guard involved, the specialized units. This will involve the local hospitals, Gibson City area hospitals, and we're actually doing transports of patients. This is going to get the preparatory work done for the Southern Illinois exercise, which is a mandate in 2014 for the Madrid Fault. So these exercises are going to be becoming more and more common. From my assessment of EMA in the time I've kind of been full-time with them, our EMA is what we're going to make of it. You can put as much energy into it as you want. Ideas are great, but if the ideas don't get followed through with and there's no structure, it's not going to be worthwhile when we need it, okay? Because EMA is a resource, and the resource is very important in an emergency situation. So that's what I've been working on. We're starting to do SOPs and SOGs. I think with EMA falling under the Sheriff's Office is a paramilitary organization. I think that that's going to give more structure and stability to EMA, and that's what I like. I come from the military, then I got into law enforcement, so I like structure. And John Dwyer, who I've been working with, has been very positive, very receptive. He's enjoyed, I think, the transition, and he knows that we're going to support him and his efforts as well with EMA. So any questions?
John.
I'm glad you mentioned the New Madrid Fault. I have earthquake insurance. It's a cheap rider right now. There's some discussion, committee of the whole, about, of course, March is going to be probably Tornado Preparedness Month, And we had discussion about what EMA does and the such with facilitating education and for the community as a whole, for emergency purposes in case of a catastrophic tornado. So, I mean, I'd like to meet you. I'm not going to question you tonight about this. It's a structural thing, as you discussed earlier, about how things should run the EMA. But myself and probably Mr. Carter might like to join us. We could talk about the preparedness and how EMA handles things with March coming up. So good luck and welcome, and thank you for serving.
Make sure it's still on. No, you're absolutely right. EMA, and this has actually come to light this week as far as getting more volunteers, spontaneous volunteers. Spontaneous volunteers are what's needed, like the 1996 tornado that we had, Ogden and Urbana. Spontaneous volunteers are what you need, and that's educating the community. We have committees. Mr. Kurtz serves on one of them, and I've been on it the past year with him, the LEPC. And that's bringing the government and the private sector together. So that it's there, it's how much energy people want to dedicate and make sure that they follow through with it. And that's what I'm hoping to do. So, and Mr. Dwyer is too. So, but yeah, I'll be glad to talk with you, one-on-one or whenever.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Any questions, Mr. Alex?
Just a couple of comments, I guess. Sorry, I'm trying to talk to you and the microphone at the same time. Sheriff, my only real concern with this was, whether we get the other agencies on board, because obviously the EMA is in the case of an emergency, the EMA is a coordinating body. And, as I said at the COW meeting, one thing law enforcement agencies are as good at doing as fighting crime as fighting each other. So I wanted to make sure that and we had been told from Deb that, the Champaign was on board with this, Urbana, U of I were on board with this. And you don't want to give authority to one group and a group of peers if it's going to be a problem. And I always wanted to get your assurance that everybody's happy with this arrangement in the law enforcement community.
The big three chiefs, U of I, Champaign, and Urbana, have all indicated support. The university itself, Todd Short, who's their director of emergencies, has sent a letter. I believe Ms. Busey can address this. Dorothy David has indicated support. I don't know Mayor Pressing's feelings. She hasn't addressed it one way or the other. I will say in this community, and I go to sheriff's things, and I don't know if I've said this to you guys, this community's got support between law enforcement that doesn't exist in a lot of communities. In a lot of communities, the sheriff and the police agencies fight with each other. We don't do that here. We literally have breakfast at least twice a month, plus our regular meetings, just to communicate. The other thing, the fire agencies so far have indicated tremendous support for this concept, and we do work well together so far, knock on wood. Now we'll probably have a blow up tomorrow, but so far I really don't think that will be an issue, and perhaps Deb wants to address it since she's talked to the other administrators.
I think Deb said her piece at the committee of the whole meeting, so I just wanted to hear you say it. Just if I could follow up, to me, the biggest advantage to this, I think if you look at a purely civilian EMA, from the standpoint of emergency preparedness, I think a civilian EMA can create plans. They can do a great job at that, and I think they have. My biggest concern with the EMA, given the small number of staff that we had attached to it in the past, was in execution. And my biggest concern is, we can have all the plans in the world, but when the tornado hits or the train goes off the rails and you can't find the EMA director, or you got one guy who this responsibility lands on, that's a problem. So I definitely like this idea of having a larger organization backing up this function, so you don't have a transition between the planning side of things and the execution side of things. So that would be my biggest. I think that's the biggest advantage, biggest argument in favor of this. And just wanted to say to Shane, as John said, it is from somebody who grew up in Illinois. It is New Madrid. They say things funny down there. So. Thank you.
Ms. Petrie.
One of the things that was brought up at the committee of the whole has to do with the fact that the EMA director came and reported directly to the county board. And I'm interested in what your plans are for following up on that pattern that's been set and which has created comfort level between the board and the EMA.
Not to pick a fight with you, but let us make it clear. The sheriff is a constitutional officer. If you give me that responsibility, we will execute that responsibility, but we will also hold that power. I don't plan on coming every month and reporting, well, this is what we're doing today and this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Is that okay? I will not do that. And so I'll make that perfectly clear. As big things go on or as you have questions, I'll try to answer them. And Patsy, you've sent me a lot of questions, and I don't think I have ever not answered them. I don't think. And I will continue to do that. But I don't want any misapprehension. If you turn this over to the sheriff, we will assume that responsibility, but we also will retain that power and not ask permission.
I don't want to belabor this, but being on the other end of the stick and having received services from the EMA department on several occasions, I can tell you that when the chips are down, they're there. And the important thing about it isn't who's in charge, it's getting the job done, and they've been able to do that on an emergency basis. I can tell you factually that when we were on a working fire that looked like we had our hands full, their command car would be out there before our lines was all charged, if they knew that. And they do know that because everything goes through MedCAD. So I think we're making a big deal out of something we don't need to worry about. We just need good hands at the wheel and keep it moving forward.
Mr. Alex?
Just real quick to follow up on Ms. Petrie's question. I think the concern isn't that the county board has an interest in micromanaging EMA. I think the issue is that obviously, we are going to get questions from our constituents, because we do have the ultimate responsibility here. We're the ones who, are assigning the responsibility for this. And in theory, if it's not being done right, we're the ones who should be doing something else. So I think it is reasonable to expect that somebody comes and reports to the county board on a periodic basis related to what the county's doing as far as emergency management, emergency preparedness, just to increase our confidence. I mean, it's a little bit different than the normal operations of the sheriff's office in that, we, as you said, don't have any authority over what the sheriff does in the fulfillment of your statutory duties. But this is something that we are assigning to the sheriff's office under the assumption that the county board will still, I think, be aware at least of what's going on. So I would ask that you consider having, Shane or somebody who has responsibility for this to make sure that the county board remains informed as to what it is that you're doing.
That is a very fair statement. Remember, you can always take this back if you're not happy with what we're doing. I guess perhaps the middle ground. How can I say this? I don't want to have somebody come here every month to sit here and basically tell you things are proceeding status quo.
All right, hold on.
Just to clarify between what the board members are looking for and the sheriff, EMA has historically provided a monthly report that gets posted. I assume that monthly report can continue to be completed because it just basically provides statistical information so that the board has access to information about what's going on, practices that are occurring, and things like that. And I imagine that is not going to be a problem for the staff person who takes this over to continue providing that monthly report. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement. I don't think that will be an issue. And quite frankly, since we started working with the EMA, we've tried to make a lot of the stuff public, frankly, because we want the public's participation in this stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Finally on the policy, personnel, and appointments area, we recommend adoption of resolution number 8429, amending the 2013 County Board calendar of meetings, and I so move.
I'm sorry, I already have a second. Sorry, next time. Any discussion on this resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's
right,
all.
Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Alex for Finance.
Thank you. Finance recommends adoption of resolution number 8430, payment of claims authorization. I so move.
Second.
Second by Ms. Michaels. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move adoption of resolution number 8431, purchases not following the purchasing policy.
Second. Second, Mr. Esri. Any discussion? Ms. Petrie.
Microphone. I have a question for the auditor. I can't find the page number. It's the first page, Regional Planning Commission, rifle bags.
Mm-hmm. Police training.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
In fact, I learned from Cameron Moore, just to let you know, ours is the only regional planning commission in the country that has a police training program.
That's true.
Yep. So there you go.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, Finance recommends adoption of resolution number 8432, authorizing budget amendment 13-00015, increased appropriations of $333,142 to the fund balance to make permanent grant of funds, transfer to the nursing home fund from the general corporate fund to make permanent the grant of these funds from the general corporate fund to the nursing home, which is a fancy way of saying acknowledging the payment of the nursing home loan, declaring the payment of the outstanding nursing home loan. And I so move.
Second. Mr. Maxwell, any discussion? Well, okay. Ms. Schroeder.
Yeah, I think you can go either way on this, but I'm going to go decide to forgive this loan. But I want to make the point that yes, the nursing home is still paying on bonds the overage of building the nursing home, but also the nursing home burned through over $3 million worth of cash before we got a handle on it, both out of its operating fund and out of general corp fund. So I don't look at it as this has already been repaid. I think it's something legally we probably should do to get rid of this $330,000 loan, but by no means has it been repaid, but I'm willing to forgive it.
Any other discussion? Ms. Coward?
Okay, so we're writing out that $3 million as a,
333.
as a gift. And are we gonna do this every month or every year?
Mr. Allen, I'm sorry.
This loan is outstanding from 2008. The general corporate fund has not loaned money to the nursing home for its operations since 2008. This is the last remaining outstanding balance. And once it's paid off, then it's done.
Mr. Alex, did you have further comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, this is in a little different form than we saw it at the committee of the whole meeting, because there we were discussing whether or not essentially to treat the loan as paid, and this is the actual budget amendment which does it. I don't want to go into all the details because I think we did a good job going over those at the committee of the whole, but I just wanted to point out this is $333,000 from the fund balance. This is not cash. I mean, the money's already been spent years ago, so this is essentially I hate to use the word a paper loss, but it's essentially a paper loss. The county will recognize a $333,000 expense in the fiscal year 13 budget, but we don't actually, there's no cash changing hands. And I would encourage the board to support this.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I guess I'd just like to basically second what Mr. Schrader said. It hasn't really and truly been paid off, but I think it is time to go ahead and say, let's get it off the books instead of having every year. Let's continuous, let's do it another year, another year, another year, another. I think, yeah, let's get rid of it and be done with it. Thanks.
Just a short point. I mean, I know everybody knows what I think about that, but to call it the nursing home, I think is somewhat misleading. 4 years ago, we moved the management of the nursing home to a new structure. Those loans and mismanagement of funds and the $3 million that Mr. Schrader were talking about were mismanaged under the oversight of the county board. There were worse things than mismanagement of money. There is Medicare issues. There are open federal investigation. I don't want to go into all that, but I would just want to draw a distinction between the current nursing home and what used to be the nursing home that actually lost the money.
Okay, we need a roll call vote. We need 15 votes to pass this resolution.
Cowart? Yes. Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Michaels? Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie? Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex?
Yes.
Bergson? Carter? Kurtz?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Other business, Mr. Quisenberry, we have the addendum. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Alex, finance, that's right. We have the addendum.
I'm sorry, I don't have the addendum in front of me. Labor moves adoption of the contract with the Internal Order of Police with regard to the corrections workers. Covering, here we go, covering December 1st, 2012 through November 30th, 2015.
Any second? Mr. Harper, any discussion? Mr. Hartke?
Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a good deal for us. Yes, that bonus that we're offering is large, but basically we're getting them to agree to contract to allow new hires to not be in SLEP, the more expensive retirement fund, and now be in the standard retirement fund we do as a county. According to Deb and her numbers, this is saving us multiple six figures over the course of time. What did you say, 10% of payroll potentially within the next decade? It's a very big number we can save for a little small investment now, and getting it in the contract means they have no grievance against us for it. So I am going to vote for this, and I certainly hope you do as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hartke. We have any others? Mr. Alex?
I was just going to mention, this isn't a budget amendment to approve the money, but we'll be bringing a budget amendment. The money for the raises that are included in this contract is already included in the fiscal year 2013 budget. Right. So you won't be seeing that. It's already been approved.
It's in the contingent line.
Excuse
so
me.
We'll have to transfer it.
Okay, it's in the it's in the bottom line. The bonus amounts, the ratification bonus amounts that are being paid in this are going to come to about $144,000. You'll see a budget amendment for those next month. Again, you know, it sounds like a lot of money up front, but I think if you look at what we'll be saving every year, you know, going forward, it's going to dwarf that original upfront investment. So I think we should approve this.
Okay, do we have any other further discussion on this item? Do we need a roll call on this? No. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. If we have no other business, I have no new business. I think I call for adjournment here. We're here, it's so moved. Second. All right, be careful going home, please. Take it easy.